Hello and welcome to this director's commentary of my epic battle report. This particular battle report is a recreation of the battle for Golgotha, which featured in White Dwarf 154 and was reprinted in the Space Marine Battles book. When I started trying to level up my channel here, I was looking for ideas to something special to do, and fellow Epic community member Caregadras, he suggested that I do this. If you don't know him, you should check out his Epic Armageddon Total War page. You'll find that his battle reports are proper Warhammer 40,000 grimdark, and it's full of huge gargantuan battles, and he's got a lot of photoshopped images, so there's a lot of images you'll see that where there's the guns being fired and force fields and things like that. It's really amazing, his page. I'd recommend you go and check it out. I'll put a link in the video to this as well. So thank you for him for suggesting this. My epic battle reports are much more in the vein of what I would call classic epic, the early days of it. Second edition specifically, and this particular game is actually, I'm playing it with second edition rules, which is unusual for me, but I'm very much influenced by those White Dwarf battle reports, where the focus was in the narrative rather than on the actual gameplay. We've just run through the armies there. I've tried to recreate these as faithfully as possible to the original, within the limits of my own collection. I think the squad force is exactly as it was, but there's a couple of units in the Ork army which have some minor changes. There's a couple of proxies in there, most notably the Met Boy Gargant, which is one of the few missing pieces in my own collection. So I've proxied it here with a slasher Gargant, but it is the Met Boy Gargant rules I've been using during it, so to all intents and purposes it is the same unit as featured in the battle report, and I've armed it up with 2 deluxe custom cannon. I've also tried to replicate the battlefield and deployment as shown in the diagrams in White Dwarf as best as I can. I'm running this in a 6x4 board, but they had it on an 8x4, so I've done the best I can. I think it's a reasonable approximation of their setup, but you know, I understand it's not perfect, and I don't have access to some of the terrain that they had. So you'll see there was a bit of flyby footage there, so this is a kind of more recent development in my battle reports, when I'm trying to integrate some real footage into the actual report itself. Up until now I've always just used photographs and created artificial camera moves within the photographs. So this is a new thing, so I've put it in to show the deployment, and I've now got splices of this footage as we're seeing here now, which is showing you where the movement, what happened after the movement phase, where everybody ended up, and I'm also going to put them in the end phases so you can see where everything was at the end of the turn. So hopefully it gives a good flavour for the setup, and you get to see a wee bit of my minis, and hopefully it maybe gives you a better idea of the depth of the board, and the kind of relative sizes of things in relation to each other. These buildings that you're seeing, and the kind of fortifications, these from a friend who had a company called Battlescene Designs. I'm hoping he's maybe going to set up again. That would be good. I hope he would get some business out of some of the terrain that he gets here, that I bought from him. He's a really good guy, and I recommend all his stuff. It's nice and really reasonably priced as well. It's not only just those 2 towers in that one. You'll see that the bridge that's on this particular board is also from Battlescene Designs as well. And the hills that are on this, there's a couple of ones that I built myself years ago, but I recently got some hills from Callista, which again were really reasonable price and really good quality. I'm really happy with them, and I'll maybe do a wee video showing you those in a wee bit more detail. So into turn 1 now, and the Colossus is the first one to activate, and the Colossus is a great unit because he's got so many weapons. He's also got this gyrocopter which can act as a spotter, which means his fearsome Doomsday Cannon can fire effectively directly. And what I mean by that, if you're not familiar with 2nd edition, is there's oh, and I've scattered it there. That's a mistake. That shouldn't have happened when it's a direct barrage. So yeah, so you know, I played the game since, well, I've really played since 1st edition, Adeptus Titanicus and Space Marine 1st edition, but I have played 2nd edition since it was launched. So even I still make mistakes here and there, as that shows. But yeah, the Colossus, you can see that it's still firing guns here. This is its rockets, I think, it's firing across the hillside. And even after all that, it's still got 8 battle cannon, which it uses to fire at the Gargant. And one of the nice things, there's a few quirks in the rules with Gargants, and that's one of them, where the power fields flicker, and sometimes shots, even though it's got a whole load of power fields up, if they flicker, sometimes the shots get through and cause a bit of damage. So in that case, it wasn't too ruinous for the Orks. It was just a bit of light damage. And yeah, one of the things I'm kind of guilty of in general terms with Epic is overlooking artillery. I've never really been that taken by artillery. I've always been more interested in weapons that just really have straight stats. I can't give you a good reason for it. I think that the artillery is obviously quite static, and I prefer units that can move about and redeploy if something's amiss. And obviously things like mill mortars and third guns and the Goliath mega cannon can't do those things. So that's part of the reason. I usually do take the Goliath mega cannon because I do feel that they're a weapon which is really fitting for the squats. But in general terms, I don't tend to use mill mortars and third guns. So this was a bit of fun for me to try out some units that I would usually overlook, to be honest. And yeah, now we went right through the close combat there. There was a bit of a panic when Ghazghkull panicked and used his ability, and it really did not work out well one little bit. You would have expected the Orcs to have totally torn apart the bikes, but the rolls were absolutely atrocious on almost every occasion there, which is why they did so badly. And we're into the advanced segment here, and yeah, this was a great moment, because if anybody has read the original battle report, which I'm sure a lot of people who come here probably have, that was exactly what happened in the battle report. It fired the ball round, hit the Colossus, it didn't scatter, and took it out. One thing I would say about that is that if it was Net Epic I was playing, that might have survived it, because in 2nd edition, which is the version I'm playing in this particular video, Praetorians only had a 1+ save, and when Net Epic revised the rules, which is, sorry, for anybody that doesn't know, Net Epic is the fan version of 2nd edition. When they redid the rules, they introduced hit templates the same as Titans, so it gives them a much stronger durability. In other words, you would pick a location, roll to see exactly what location it hit, and then it would get the armour save, which potentially would be 1+, the same as a normal Praetorian, but then you would roll in the damage table, so potentially I think it's only a 5 or 6 destroys the bridge in particular, to kind of destroy the Colossus. So even though it had failed its test, it potentially could have survived a good number of hits like that. So yeah, that's one of the interesting differences between 2nd edition and 1st edition. The Praetorians are far more durable in Net Epic. And here's one of my board, my over, what do you call them? Yeah, kind of overview of the board, which I like to do, and I try and show roughly where the objectives are and colour code them so that you realise greens orcs and reds are squats. So it's pretty close, nothing's really broken so far other than that Colossus. And we're into the second turn and another flyby. So you can see that the orcs are moving up fairly quickly there with the cult of speed, beginning to try and encroach in the squat territory. One of the things that was interesting about this scenario was that I noticed that they were very generous to the squats in terms of where there's one there, the objectives were placed. One in that tower, and there's actually two in this other tower, which makes it really hard for the orc player, because there's essentially three objectives that are in, a reinforced area of the board, and so it doesn't really give them much chance. I can see why they did it, because the squats are a force who really struggles in Epic for manoeuvrability. If you don't take, it's really only the guild bikers that they've got that can get about the board with any kind of reasonable speed. So you need a lot of them if you're going to capture a lot of objectives. But yeah, clearly Andy Chambers and Jervis Johnson had decided that to help out the dwarfs there a wee bit. I did like the fact that they had these kind of two fortresses. So yeah, it made sense from a narrative point of view. But I would say in general terms, your objectives wouldn't be placed like that. So yeah, we're into the next turn, and sorry, I've already already established that. And yeah, Ghazghkull's mob there, I was really hoping they would take down the Overlord armoured airship, but they failed to do so. They're pretty powerful. Even in second edition, I think, yeah, in fact, I think they were always like that, where it was the 1 to 3, they would go through, they would miss the thing in general, and even then it still got a 1+ save. And here we're seeing another ball round from this time from the Met Boy Gargant, which is taking out the land train, which was another good moment. I love seeing these. The orc weapons are fairly unreliable. They can go all over the place. They can miss very easily, but when it comes off like this, it's brilliant. And then I get the backup of those 18 shots from the custom cannon. That was a great moment as well, and allowed the Met Boy Gargant to do that damage. And straight after it, here we have the Scorcher turret getting blown off and actually killing a stand of boys as it flew off into the kind of pit there where everybody was having a fight. So that's one of the nice quirks of second edition. Things like that happen where a weapon will just blow, straight off and smash in amongst infantry and kill them. I've always liked to kind of these wee little details in Epic that can make things, quite good fun and just something that happens out the blue and it's unexpected, and that's a good example of the kind of things I'm talking about. Shock attack gunners are another unit that I don't tend to use that often, and I've still not really used them yet. I've not managed to get them into position to fire. You really need them in first fire immediately. They didn't have line of sight. I had to move up onto the hill, and by the time it was time for them to fire, they were already gone. So that was a bit of a shame that they never got tested at all, really, other than as target practice for the other side. And here we are again, the Great Gargant having a go at the Bane Blades. I'd be hoping with the number of shots with the Ripper Fist and the head battle cannon and the Gatling cannon, it would taken both of those out there. Didn't target Yarrick because he's a command unit, and I would only target him with the closest unit. So I split the fire between the two of them, but it didn't pan out. One of them was defeated, but the other one was still standing, which I didn't think was the greatest of yields for all that firepower going after them. You can see they've got knob spikes there. They're from the Vanguard defeating detail, I think it is. Those are. They're really nice models. They're great proxies if you're ever looking to buy. If you're trying to get into Epic and you don't want to buy all the old models because eBay can be expensive, then Vanguard miniatures is definitely worth looking at, because there's lots of things that you can use to proxy there. They're obviously not, Orks, and they're not actually they aren't actually the vehicles that Games Workshop made, but some of the sculpts are lovely, and they're actually a lot nicer than some of the things that Games Workshop produced, with the greatest of respect. And yeah, I was really impressed with this because I don't have the Mech Boy Gargant model. I've never really used it, but I was really impressed with this force field that it's got. It can overheat if you leave it on all the time, but in practice, it's really once you switch it off, it's off for the whole battle. But I think realistically, you can get away with having it on for 2 turns at least. Once you're into turn 3, it's a bit dodgy. I did keep it on for the 3 turns, and that force field, unless it flickers, nothing can touch it, and I found that really impressive. As well, the Berserkers here against the Goths. The Goths are good force, but one of the great things about squats when they're fighting, squat infantry when it's fighting Orks, is that they can re-roll any 1s or 2s. So there was a few times that happened in these combats where they were getting to re-roll 1 of their dice or 2 of their dice sometimes if it was a bad roll, and yeah, it meant the Berserkers in particular were pretty effective. The cavalry doesn't get that bonus, but yeah, it's a great thing. And here we go, the Mech Boy Gargant came close, 9. If it was a 10 or more, it would have overheated and could have damaged the Gargant and started fires and things like that. But got away with it. And kept it going for turn 3, so it's still in operation in turn 3, which is why the Mech Boy Gargant survives for so long in the game, because they really couldn't. They were relying on the field flickering. But yeah, we'll see what happens in turn 3 with that, if he gets away with it again, or if anything happens to it. So yeah, you can see there's some damage mounting up now. You can see the Colossus is out of it. The troops are pretty much surviving yet, and also the artillery company, they are doing fine. The Orcs haven't been able to get anywhere near them, but you can see that the land train is taking an absolute beating. So yeah, that's the points are mounting up there for the Orcs, and I think from memory in this turn we'll see in a second or two when it comes up to the end phase, but I'm pretty sure that the Guild Bikers were broken in this particular. Yeah, they were, because they're in full back orders there. So yeah, and you'll find as well that I think a few of the Orc formations went this turn. The first turn there was nothing broke, because that's the great thing about the Orcs, that the breakpoints, because they work in these huge mobs, the breakpoints mean that it usually takes a couple of turns before you can. It's pretty rare that you'll break an Orc formation in the first turn. Maybe the second and maybe even the third turn before, depending on the size of mobs that you do. So that makes them, it means they can take a lot of punishment, and it gives them the chance to get to where they need to be before they'll actually break. So yeah, I think that's a good thing. And I just missed there because I wasn't paying attention what was broken there amongst the Orcs. But yeah, clearly something's gone. I think it was the Death Skulls from memory. Yeah, because they were getting punishment up in that hill, so I think it was them that went. That gave the 9 points, and here we are running our flyby. I welcome any thoughts and comments in the videos. By the way, if you don't like these things, please let me know. And I want to make these battle reports the best I possibly can, and I want the community to enjoy them. So if you feel that there's too much of this stuff or too little, I'm open to comments. not saying I'll take on board, I'll change everything, but yeah, I'm interested to see what people think of these, if they think there's too many. I mean, I could limit it to just an end phase flyby. I think I did that in the previous one. But I thought because this was second edition and I was using, previously I've been using the Epic Evolution, which is a bit of a mishmash between second edition and stealing some of the ideas from Epic Armageddon, where it's just all constant activation, so you move and fire all in the one activation. Whereas going back to second edition, you're right back into that. The whole thing with the phases, with the first fire phase, you've got a movement phase, then the first fire phase, close combat, and then advanced, and then the end phase. So some of that's gone in Evolution, and so that's why there was only the one flyby, because it was really at the end of the turn. There wasn't a movement as such, but a movement phase as such, but there is in this one. And yeah, into the third turn, everything's getting a bit stretched now. The casualties have been mounting up. And yeah, I can see Ghazghkull's getting his squad getting targeted, and they respond by trying to take down Yarrick, trying to assassinate him, but the Baneblade stands up to it. As it's mentioned here in the thing, the text, the Great Gargant still had 4 power fields, so this seemed like a bit of a waste of time shooting at the Great Gargant, but the power fields flickered, and the roll when the ammo was failed and it got maximum damage, started a fire, had to roll on the fire damage table, and it was a 7, which blew the whole thing sky high. So that is, again, that's another example of some of the quirks of second edition. You know, there's a lot of wee details in it, and you can get a lot of unexpected things happen. So that's another really good example, and it's one of the reasons why I still love second edition. That, you know, there is a lot of crunch to the rules, and if you're starting out in it, it's maybe a bit overwhelming, particularly if you look at the Orks as a force, because it gets, every unit has some kind of quirk pretty much. I would say if you were starting out in second edition, the best place to start is the Marines. They're the simplest force, and they don't have too many complex rules, and they all do their job well. They all have kind of jobs, tasks that they can carry out, and there's not too much stuff to remember. But I mean, I remember most. Now, I've played this for so many years that I actually know most of the unit stats for all these things. So that's a big benefit, and it's part of the reason why I still like playing it. But yeah, it would be a bit overwhelming. But even I still have all the rules next to me when I'm playing these things. I've got to check the odd thing here and there. So yeah, and we're into close combat now, and yeah, not much is really happening. We're down to the, as I say, everything's overstretched, and it's pretty much the two sides are almost ground to a standstill. The artillery company took a bit of a battering there, but even they didn't break. And that's another thing to mention. I was talking about the Orks, about how they're difficult to break. The Scots are also difficult to break. All their units, it's compared to all the other forces, it's usually like half. If half the unit's gone, it's broken. In the case of the Scots, I think it's 2/3, possibly 3/4. I think it's 2/3. So, which means that most of the formations really need to take an absolute hammering before you'll break them and get the points out of them. And yeah, I mean, I thought the Scots were in a fairly bad position at the end of this, but we're about to see a bit of a twist in the tail here. The Berserkers did really well holding that objective, because the Goths weren't able to do anything about it, and they were hoping that the Goths were hoping that the Berserkers were going to attack them there, but they didn't. Both sides ended up in a standoff. So you can see, yeah, the Death Skulls were broken, Cult of Speed was broken, and the Great Gargant, which was the unexpected bonus, was broken, as opposed to the Colossus, the Land Train, the Guild Bikers, and the Baneblades. And you can see there 1 point between the two of them, and most gallingly for the Orks, it was 45 points was the threshold for victory. So the yeah, that that was a really close result and very unfortunate and unfair on the Orks, I think. And what we're seeing now is I've got another. I did Battle Times 2. I did a 7,000 point version with all the kind of toys and gadgets because I've got reasonable, quite big armies, and yeah, that's coming soon. I'll be building that video. It's been played. It's ready. It's ready for me just to get on with it, and that'll be going on my Patreon. So anyway, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. Bye bye.